Super Rugby quarterfinals on Saturday, folks. 3 games on. It's a pretty hectic fixtures list with, basically back-to-back-to-back games. We'll go over some squads, predictions, stats, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how these games may or may not pan out this Saturday. The first one is kind of a late afternoon game over here in NZ. The Chiefs and the Waratahs. Chiefs finished the season in third with a 10-4 record. And the Waratahs much improved on last year. Still finished with a positive record, 8-6. Good enough for 6th spot. They did meet earlier on in the season. And the Chiefs had a pretty good time, 51 points to 27. I think that might have been the first round where the Aussie and Kiwi teams met. So that would have been in Melbourne, if I'm not mistaken. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But the Chiefs should be at home full of confidence. But it's been kind of an up and down season for both them and the Tars. So anything probably could happen. But I would say the Chiefs are pretty heavy favourites. The Chiefs have made a few changes. Nankivell's back to the more familiar 13 jersey. Narawat moves to fullback. Jonah Lowe gets a start up from the bench, and Nana Satoro is back on the left wing. So lots of changes in the back line, but Weber and Gatland are still steady as she goes. The front row is pretty much the same. Ross Tokiaho Ta'awau, same front row. Ritella Kamva'i, the same second row. And then Finau Jacobson and Sawakula, the same back row. Remember, no Sam Kane. Still, he is out injured. One of the CLs, MCL, I think, out for, I think it's only a short-term sprain, but we'll see when he comes back. Pohipi is down to the bench. Mitch Brown's back in the 23, and Xavier Rowe is then on the bench. So, it's a pretty familiar-looking Chiefs lineup, and apart from Sam Kane, I think most of these guys we're kind of used to seeing at some point in the season. So, we'll see how they go. I mean, Tupaia, in his blockbusting midfield carrying, he's like the second New Zealander for run meters in the whole competition. I mean, it's usually fullbacks, because fullbacks get a lot of unopposed run meters, but Tupaia in that midfield, and plus a bit on the wing, second for run meters behind only Will Jordan and the Kiwi guys. So he may be a key guy for them to start shut down. And remember, there's no Parise for the Waratahs still, because he's got an injury which has kept him out for seemingly ages. For the Tars, Harry Johnson-Holmes is back at tight head, so that's a bit of good news. Otherwise, the squad looks pretty stable, man. Bell and Parecki alongside him in the front row. Holloway, Hannigan, second row. Gamble, Hooper, and Harris is the back row. I mean, Gamble and Hooper, it's a whole lot of tackling in that back row, man. I mean, Charlie Gamble, I think, second overall in the entire competition for tackles. And he hasn't even played every game, man. Like, sometimes he's been riding the pine since Hooper's been back. But, Gordon and Edmed, 9-10. Again, familiar. Edmed's been relatively kind of ice cold for a guy who's not that deep on Super Rugby experience. For Keddy Newsom is the midfield, like I mentioned, no Parise, which is unfortunate because that guy's a proper difference maker. Nowanita Wase, Donaldson, and Peach are the other guys. Horton is in on the bench. Gleason's in on the bench. Holtz is down to the bench, but otherwise, like I mentioned, kind of relatively steady from what we've seen from the Tars this year. Interestingly, both these sides like an offload. Well, they're quite high up there on offloads. I think the Chiefs cough up the pill a bit more, but they also chuck it around a bit more. But both these sides play pretty entertaining rugby. So, I mean, knockout matches can be a bit dry, but I reckon this one could be a good watch. Like I said, it's an late afternoon game here in NZ. So, hopefully if we get some good weather and some good sunshine, it could be a pretty fun one. The Chiefs are the favourites. There's still no rugby forecast algorithm picks for some reason. It's not been updated, but the bookies have got the Chiefs by 10. So more than a try favourites for this one. The next one, the Blues and the Landers. Blues comfortably the top team at the end of the regular season, 13-1 for first. The Highlanders kind of scraped through with a less than impressive 4-10. Well into the negatives, that record. 8th. Would it surprise me for the Landers to go into Eden Park and get an upset win over the Blues? Still no. I mean, I've been a Blues fan for long enough to kind of expect them to choke at some point. It still quite hasn't happened. But would it surprise me for the Landers to get a win here? No. I mean, obviously the Blues are going to be big favourites because they have been really good this season. Genuinely quite good. They've even won the games where they haven't played that well. But it'd be very Blues-like to lose to a team with a well negative record. The Blues have made loads of changes because if you remember last week against the Tars, they essentially put out the extended playing squad. So most of the key guys got rested. So you got Hodgman, Eklund, Tuangafasi, Tucker, Robinson. That's in jerseys 1 through 5, who didn't feature last week. Akira Ioane's at 6, who was on the bench last week. Papali'i and Satutu 7 and 8, back into the 23. Christie, Barrett, Tuivasa-Sheck, Ioane, that's your 9-10 combo plus your midfield. Heem and Talea on the wings and Perofeta at fullback. None of those guys played last week. So they all should be really well rested. They've essentially had a bye. I don't think that's enough time to build up a heck of a lot of rust. And then guys like Tuina Kuafe and Vikina are still on the bench. Laulala, Romano, Choate, Knock, Lamb, and Sullivan, all who started last week, are down to the bench. So it's back to the more familiar Blues side that we're used to seeing. I mean, Perofeta at fullback is the top point scorer in the whole competition. So who would have picked that at the start of the season? Probably not that many people. For the Landers, they've made a few changes, not quite as many as the Blues. Trying to bounce back after a pretty disappointing loss last week. Gardner Bishop's back in at fullback. Umaga Jensen shifts from 12 to 13. Gregory's in at 12. Dawai's in on the left wing. Marty Banks and Aerosmith still the 10 and 9 combo. Mikaeli Tu'u is probably your most X-Factor player in the forward pack at number 8. Harmon is still there. Renton's up from the bench. Dixon, Evans, Ainsley, Makaleo, De Groot. Frizzell's back on the bench, which is maybe a bit of good news. We haven't seen him play for ages. And Fakatava, I think, is maybe the key guy you look at on the bench because genuinely, when he's come off the bench, he's added a bit of spark. He seems to really suit that role at the moment of just adding that bit of extra zip and unlocking defenses who are maybe getting a bit tired. He either goes for the gap himself or he puts someone else through. So despite the fact that he's on the bench, he'd be one of the guys that I would be certainly looking out for. The last time they played at Eden Park, it was 32-20. So a relatively comfortable win for the Blues without being a big old blowout. Interestingly, like the Landers, despite their poor record, are ahead of the Blues statistically in a few areas. They play with more possession, they kick the ball more, they got a better line out. But maybe the Blues, crucially, more clean breaks, which generally lead to tries, a higher tackling percentage. So, yeah, the Blues are big-time favourites, as I mentioned. 15 points with the bookies. It's a normal kickoff, like just after 7. But, as I said, I'm still waiting for it all to go to custard, and it would be very Blues-like for this one to go downhill. I'll still back the boys, but, yeah, we will see what happens. Fingers crossed. They can go and get a win over the Landers, but it'd be a major upset if the Landers could hand the Blues their second loss of the season. Should be an interesting one. And the last one, over in Canberra, the Brumbies, who kind of finished the season on a bit of a slump, up against the Hurricanes, who are the ultimate kind of hot and cold team. 10 and 4, 8 and 6, so pretty similar records, 4th against 5th. This one I think statistically, or at least by the bookies, is due to be the closest game, but we'll see if that ends up kind of panning out. For the Brumbies, Slipper's up from the bench and Whainga'a is in a hooker, so that's some changes. Alatoa is still there. Swain and Neville in the second row, so Neville's up from the bench, swapping places with Nick Frost. Hooper, Roma, and Samu are your back row, so Roma's back into the 23. Jerome Brown loses the 7 jersey for this week. Nick White and Lolosio 9-10. Good to see them kind of back after Lolosio missed the game a few weeks ago, but they're a good combo. Simone and Ikitau, the midfield. Wright, who's had 8 tries this season. He's like a 3rd top try scorer, but I feel like he hasn't got one for a while. He's on the right wing, Muirhead on the left wing, and Banks there at fullback. Remember, a few of these Brumbies guys are leaving at the end of the season, plus Dan McKellar is in his last season with the Brumbies, so these guys will want to go out on a high. They certainly won't want to go out with a home loss in a quarterfinal. So we'll see what they can do. Sio's another one. He's on the bench. It's his last game if they lose. So he's leaving the Brumbies at the end of the season. They've only got the 2 backs on the bench by the looks of things in Ryan Lonergan and Ollie Sapsford. But, yeah, we'll see how they're able to go. For the Canes, as I said, they've been a real mixed bag and they've mixed things up a wee bit. Mafaleo gets a start alongside Coles and Frank, so a bit of experience there. It's just started raining. Blackwell and Walker Leawede in the second row. So Walker Leawede's back in after not playing last week. Gibson's up from the bench. Karifi and Artie Savia. I've been looking at Artie Savia's stats, and if you think he's extraordinary, he is. He's at number 8. He's ball carrying, passing, all that kind of stuff. Defenders beaten. Yeah, if you're looking for a star man for the Canes, it doesn't go much further than him. Pettinato and Morgan, 9 and 10, and Morgan's been really dangerous this year. He's really stepped up to Super Rugby level very comfortably. Geordie Barrett and Billy Proctor, 12 and 13, so Proctor moves to 13. Geordie's back into the 23. He's the top offloader for the competition, believe it or not. Rayasi's been dangerous on the left wing. Julian Savier's back on the right. And then Morby also dangerous at fullback. Man, it's really piddling down. Ruben Love's into the 23 this week. Husson drops to the bench. Lomax is in on the bench. Yosei drops to the bench. Delaney drops to the bench. So, yeah, it's an interesting one because last time it was 42-25 to the Brumbies. So that was a pretty comfortable win. Can they back it up? Like I said, their recent form hasn't been fantastic. The Hurricanes get the most clean breaks in the competition, so they are fun to watch, but they also concede more clean breaks than the Brumbies do. The Hurricanes have got the most defenders beaten as well, but the Brumbies, they like to maul it more. They're actually behind the Blues now for mauls. The Blues maul it a bit more than the Brumbies, but I would have thought that's still going to be a key area for the Brumbies, especially seeing as I mentioned, the outside backs haven't been getting as much joy in recent weeks for the Brumbies as we've kind of come to expect. Predictions-wise, Brumbies by 2, say the bookies. So all the home teams are the favourites, but the Brumbies by the kind of narrowest of margins compared to the other 2 games. But anyway, folks, how do you see these ones going? Do you think the bookies have got them right and all the home teams will sweep through? Can the Canes, Highlanders or Waratahs get a sneaky away win? You guys let me know your thoughts, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.